There is a garden in your heart, and it's speaking to you right now. And the way you get in touch with it is to go within and to ask, to wait, to listen, to make that connection. And it's waiting for you. It's speaking to you. The answers are there. The upliftment is there. The energy is there. The vibration is there. You'll get the answers you need, but you've got to be open to it. You've got to be willing. You've got to just give it a shot. Give it a chance. I open up to my heart and I give it a chance. Together? I open up to my heart and I give it a chance. I often talk about that first heart experience I had many, many years ago. I guess it was almost 40 years ago. I was living in a big Victorian house, and I was renting a room in it. And upstairs there were a couple of neighbors who were beating their wives and kids, and my work situation was terrible, and my meditation teacher went off the deep end, and my girlfriend was out of the country and finding out she was doing all manner of things, and all kinds of stuff was going on. And I felt like my whole life had melted down. And when your whole life melts down, there's only one place to go. It ain't Ghostbusters. It's in your heart. It's in your heart. And you go into your heart, and the heart will give you the answers. But I didn't know that. So I just sat on the edge of my bed. I said, help. And when I said help, this feeling, this warmth, overwhelming warmth and peace came into my heart. I could feel it physically in my heart. And I heard the words from 1 Samuel, behold, I give you a new heart. I didn't know where it was from. I probably heard of it before. But I realized in that very moment, from the tip of my toes to the top of my head, I had a revelation. And what a revelation is something where you get everything in a complete package. You get all of the information that you need, and you're downloaded. And in that moment, I knew that all I had to do whenever I was in a situation that was distressing to me, or I wanted guidance, or I needed an answer, was to go into my heart, and I would know. And it worked out that way over the weeks and months after that, and it led to my going into ministerial school and going into ministry 20 years earlier than I expected, and all kinds of things. But it all started with this feeling in my heart. So it's the feeling in your heart that you can get in touch with, and that heart is always speaking to you. My daughter just came back yesterday from the Youth of Unity conference at Unity Village, and they have a silent meditation, a whole day of silence, during which she asks and she listens, and she goes into the garden of the heart. She actually goes into the Myrtle Fillmore Grove, which is planted in honor of our co-founder in Unity. And she took her journal with her. Last year she got very specific guidance, which is still playing out and giving her nourishment and helping and directing her through problems even recently. And she got part 2 this last week. She got even deeper, more information, more help. And I mean, it's some powerful stuff. It's there for you if you'll listen. It's available to you. But are you listening? Are you listening? Sometimes people don't always act lovingly towards us, and we don't understand why. If we were to know the story behind the behavior that people do, maybe we would realize that you can't necessarily excuse or explain everybody's behavior, but you can understand that everybody is doing what you probably would expect them to do given their history and their choices in life. And they're feeling and thinking those things that are pretty explicable. And so I had an experience of this when I was in ministerial school. Wife of one of my classmates was just behaving really unfriendly, extremely unfriendly. So unfriendly that and I never had any words with her or any conflict with her, but I don't know, it was like I had something on my forehead, L or something, or kicked me on my back or something. But whatever it was, she put on a big party for the entire class and I wasn't invited. I didn't know why, I couldn't figure it out. So I had learned, and I don't know whether it came to me intuitively or somebody told me, but to go into that heart space and then to ask the higher self of the other person. You see, down here on this lower level, there's that ego level. It's ego to ego. It's personality to personality. But if we lift up, there's a higher self. And the higher self will talk to the higher self. And it's the Christ in you, that higher part. So I went into that garden of the heart, and I took an elevator up to my higher self. And I imagine that she did too. And so now it's my higher self talking to her higher self. And I ask her, why? Well, what is it you need from me? What is it you need from me? Or what is it you want to tell me? And I just saw such pain in her eyes, and she said, there are things going on you don't know, you don't understand. And in the next weeks thereafter, she went through a really horrific divorce. It was terrible. She had been dealing with things, and I guess I was just the lightning rod for it, you know? Sometimes what we do, and this isn't to be a victim, but sometimes our role in people's lives is to transmute their negative energy. And it doesn't mean that we're supposed to be a doormat, but there are times that you can explain. That may be what's going on in your work situation. That may be what's going on in your neighborhood. That may be what's going on in your family dynamic at the last family reunion. You're the person that is transmuting. And what do I mean by transmute? It's gathering in that negative energy and then passing it through and purifying it. And it's a powerful thing. But and how do you know? How do you know when it's yours to do? How, you know, Jesus said, I give you a new commandment. You must love one another. Love one another as I've loved you. People will know you are my disciples by the fact that you love one another. But how do you love one another? And what is love? Well, love often takes the form of creating a space of detachment that allows something higher to work out. So what is that higher something that needs to work out? Well, often we need to get out of the way of it. Sometimes we just simply have to get out of the way of it and let it flow. And sometimes we're the one who transmutes that energy. But it means lifting out of the lower self into the higher self, out of the ego into the soul. When I went through my divorce in 1981, and I've shared this before, I was trying to save the marriage, and I was praying fervently about that. And what came to me was, do not pray for a healed marriage. Pray for a healed relationship between two souls. And then I lifted up into that higher level, and I realized it wasn't about the forms. And it all worked out beautifully. We went through a divorce, and we're still supporting each other spiritually, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It was beautifully how it worked out. Now, don't feel guilty when it doesn't work out to your liking when you do that, because it takes two to tango, so you have to be willing to free the other person. But sometimes it can work out in a really powerful way. Another example of this was when I went into a church many years ago, and they had a men's group, and the men's group was going to have a retreat. Well, they invited me to lead the retreat because I was the new minister, and that was nice and all. Well, I didn't lead that retreat for 12 years until I was long gone from that church, because there was a gentleman in the group that simply stood up and then started saying all the reasons why he did not want me to do it, and I'd never had any words with him. I couldn't figure out what was going on. You know, as a friend of mine once said, I am not a minister, I'm a Rorschach test. And I didn't know what he was upset about, but I didn't want to cause any trouble, so I backed out of the situation. And then 12 years later, they invited me to come back and lead their retreat. But it was a very interesting dynamic for at least a year, maybe two. Almost every Sunday, he would walk up to me or me and Lynn, and we'd look at each other and go, uh-oh, because he would have these zingers, and it was really rough stuff. And it was, you know, what creative way is he going to tell me where to go every single Sunday? And it was the weirdest thing. Well, I finally, it took me a long time to do this, to remember, oh, I've got a heart, I've got a garden in my heart, I can ask his higher self. So I asked his higher self, what is it you need from me? And it was patience. Patience while I work this out. Patience? You know, that stupid cartoon of the two vultures looking down and saying, patience, patience, heck, I'm going to go kill something, you know? So it's like patience, you know, I didn't want patience, but okay, patience. So I did this, and then after a few weeks after that, he walked up to me with a sheaf of paper, shoved it in my hands, and he said, read this, and walked away. I read it that week, and it was the story of him when he was 10 or 12 years old, and his scoutmaster had molested him, and the pain and the agony he went through. The next Sunday, he walked up to me and he said, did you read it? I said, yes, and I gave it back to him, and he said, you look exactly like my scoutmaster. Hello? And so I shared with him the 7-step method for forgiveness, which we have outside of the fellowship. And he did his journaling, he did his work, and he and I ended up being good, close friends. We had lunch once a month. It was wonderful. You know, and in the same church, this is another story that just popped into my head. There was a woman who walked up to me, she said, my ex-husband's name is Greg, and he looked just like you, and I still hate his guts. What? I mean, what is this? You got to understand there are stand-ins for forgiveness. stand-ins forgiveness, and you may be that stand-in. It doesn't mean you're supposed to be a victim. It doesn't mean you're supposed to, put up with a whole lot of abuse. You can set boundaries, but it does explain it. It doesn't excuse all the behavior. Well, anyway, I taught a forgiveness seminar. She took the work. She forgave her ex-husband named Greg, who looked just like me. And we ended up hiring her, and she ended up having a job there, and we got along great. Now, what is that? It doesn't always work out that way. Just understand that. You have not failed if the other person doesn't change. We don't do this work to get other people to change. We do this work because that's what we are. Jesus didn't go around healing people so they'd thank him. Jesus didn't go around loving people so that they'd give him a response. That kind of detached, non-attached love, non-codependent love, just gives because it wants to give because it wants to give. I love because I want to love because I want to love. Together? I love because I want to love because I want to love. And it's like, you let it fly. You let it go. You sow in one field, you'll reap in another. It never goes without a positive effect. I've shared before about Lynn's friend who really did a lot of stuff that was really rough, but she was true and it was really wonderful. We moved to another town. She found this wonderful friend, and they're still close, a wonderful, close relationship. And in meditation it came to her, you sowed the seeds for this friendship with this other person. So, you give your love without attachment, because in that spiritual dimension, there is no space, there is no time, there is no limitation, and the love that you give forth will always come back to you in some form, somewhere, sometime, in the way that you need for yourself without any attachment. So you just let go of the forms and you trust. Jesus, when he did this work, people didn't always fawn all over him. There's a wonderful story about the 10 lepers. Did you hear about that one? When he was in the border between Samaria and Galilee. Now realize Galilee, those were his people, his race. Samaritans, they were the other people, the other race. And there was a lot of bad blood between the Samaritans and the Galileans. He was going into a village when he was met by 10 men suffering from a dreaded skin disease. They stood at a distance and shouted, "Oh Jesus, oh Master, have pity on us." Jesus saw them and said, "Go off and let the priests examine you." On their way there, they all became whole. When one of them saw that he was healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself to the ground at Jesus' feet and thanked him. The man was a Samaritan. Jesus spoke up. Now 10 people were healed, and where are the other 9? Why is this foreigner the only one who even comes back to give thanks to God? And Jesus said to him, "You get up and go. Your faith is what made you well." Telling him, it wasn't me. But I thought Jesus healed him. Jesus was the solder for the connection between his lower self and his higher self. The higher self, the Christ in you, is where all the healing power resides. And Jesus was that. The chaplains pray with you. They don't take credit, nor do they take blame, for the results. But what they are is a solder, a little drop of solder between the higher self and the lower self. And then it allows that transmission to take place of the divine healing energy. And so that's what happened here. So realize that your role in people's lives is not a personal role. It's not trying to fix everybody. But at the same time, you have a powerful role. Jesus was saying, your faith made you whole. I had an experience of that many, many years ago when I was in New Mexico in 1978. A friend of mine had told me about a place that he called the Lourdes of America. It was a little village called Chimayo. And in Chimayo, back in the 1800s, some illiterate farmer had a vision or a dream at night where he saw this light in this hill across the river. So he went to that place the next day, curious, found a cave that nobody knew about. In the cave, there was an ornately carved, beautiful cross. Huge, big one, 8 feet. And it was made out of wood that later they found out only was found in Nicaragua. How did it get up in the 1800s to New Mexico? Nobody knew. But the people in the town thought it was a miracle. So they took the cross and set it down and decided to build a church around it, even though they couldn't afford to have a priest or a real parish. And you can see when you look at their church, one bell tower leans this way and the other one's kind of lopsided. It looks like a Gumby church, you know. Because they did it themselves. They had no priest all those years, but something funny started to happen. Every time people would go in and pray, and often they would make poultices out of the dirt, in the little chapel off the main church chapel, they would get well. And the walls of the chapel are covered with wheelchairs and with crutches. And these stories were incredible. Well, I was going to go through there for the first time, and I decided I would go there early in the morning. And I went there, and I was told that in the floor, in the dirt floor in that chapel, there was a little hole that would fill up miraculously with dirt every morning, and people would take it and, put it on themselves, and they'd have their healings. So I went in there really early in the morning, maybe about 7 a.m. And what had happened in this parish was a Catholic priest in Scotland had retired. And he had heard about this little faithful parish and all the miracles. They didn't have a priest, but they had a church. So he volunteered to retire there, receiving his pension from the British government, and he would be their priest, just feed him. And that's what he did. So he walks in, this Scottish brogue, which is the strangest thing in a Spanish-speaking town, and because he couldn't even speak Spanish, he learned it. And he was wearing this ratty sweater, and he was carrying a bucket full of dirt. And I said, hi, and he told me who he was. And I saw him shovel the dirt in the hole. And I said, I thought that dirt filled up miraculously. And he said, oh, heavens, no, I go down to the river and pick it up every morning. It's their faith that heals them. And I said, is it really true? He said, oh, yeah, this happens every week. Happens all the time. Why? Because of the solder. It's the connection of their faith, and it's that faith that's within them. But the solder is that focus that particular experience gave them. So for you and for me, we have a role in people's lives. We often are that solder for them. We often are that connection for them. We're that which lifts them up and moves them into a new consciousness. And we have to take that quite seriously. It's an important thing to do. But sometimes that love that they're calling for, sometimes it takes forms that we wouldn't necessarily expect or choose. At the end of this meditation, or at this talk, we're going to do a meditation in which we're going to talk to somebody's higher self. When you talk to somebody's higher self, sometimes you get answers that might surprise you. And so there was an experience with a woman who called me just before my church service. This was about 30 years ago. And she got my home number. She called me before I was going to leave for church. She said, I don't know what to do. My daughter has been out all night. She's 13 years old. She's drug addicted. They're calling me to go down to the police station and pick her up. And she went down there. And as she was talking to me, I just got the words, tough love. Tough love. What does that mean, tough love? I didn't know what it meant. I'd heard of an organization called Tough Love, and I suggested maybe she look it up, and she and I did. Well, she got her daughter back, and as part of the probation, they had her do some community service work. What better place to do it than in a church office? Except this 13-year-old showed up. Hi. The woman who worked in the office with me was in recovery, and she recognized the signs, and we sent her home. So this is a very inauspicious kind of situation. But what the mother did was learn the spiritual principles of setting boundaries and moving from codependent love to healthy love, and started to do the work of supporting her daughter through tough love. And you think tough love, well, tough love is about me being tough with you. No, it's not. It's about me being tough with me so that I can set the boundaries and do the things and say yes and no and be consistent. And so she began to work with it. By the time that girl was 17, she was an international officer in the Youth of Unity. She got her bachelor's, she got her master's, she got her PhD in urban planning, and is now one of the leaders in that field. Wow. What happened? What happened was that her mother was willing to be that solder for her, to be that, to embody those principles for her. Now, you can't control whether somebody else utilizes that opportunity or not. Lynn teaches something called love and logic, which is pretty much no more than spiritual principles put into child rearing. But it's about setting boundaries, being clear, being consistent, and then providing logical consequences for behavior. But where in your life are you supposed to be patient? Where in your life are you supposed to be tough love? Where in your life are you supposed to say something, hold back? All of these things are known in your heart. And when I first had that heart experience that led me to go into ministerial school 20 years early and to really change everything in my life back almost 40 years ago. That opening of my heart has been something that I've come back to time and time again. This simple exercise of moving into your heart, of listening, of allowing yourself to hear what is always going on there. Your heart is always speaking to you. It's just that we've got too much going on all the time. And so I'm going to invite you to join with me and move into this heart space once again. And this time I want you to pick somebody or somebodies that you're going to talk to their higher self. And realize, don't have any performance anxiety around this. Most people don't necessarily have a direct cognitive experience, but you might. But at least you create a space where it will filter down over time, and you'll be downloaded during this time. So just take a deep breath and let it out, and imagine those double doors with Garden of the Heart above it. Garden of the Heart. And just go through those double doors and go into that garden space again and feel yourself surrounded by this beauty and see the natural beauty of your heart. This is the outpicturing of what is always there in your heart. And your heart does know what to do. Notice that you are surrounded by beauty, sights, sounds, colors, the scent of nature. And then notice at the far end of the garden, there's an elevator. And it says higher self. And I want you to walk over to the elevator and push the button to open it. And then push the button up and go up, 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 up. And it opens up and you're in a wonderful, vast room. And the other person's higher self is walking towards you, and you greet them. You greet them however you wish to. And you just feel the love of their higher self. Whatever their ego or personality may have been up to, the higher self is always perfect and inviolable and pure in intent. The higher self is always perfect. And so you know that your higher self can love their higher self. Just sit and dwell for a moment in this feeling of love. And now ask whatever you need to. Like, what do you need of me? Or why do you want me to do this? Or why do you do that? Or what can I do to help you? Whatever it is. And then just listen without any attachment to hearing anything. And if anyone else comes to mind, let them come forward and do the same process. Dwelling in love and then asking. And now give thanks and show your appreciation and notice the room around you, and then move back into the elevator and go down, down, down into the garden of the heart. And go into that garden and notice the beauty all around you, and with great appreciation that you always will have this here for you, because your heart is ever open, always present. You go back out the double doors and come back into your physical awareness, the seat underneath you, the tingling of your hands and feet, your arms and legs. And with a sense of gratitude, just get ready and open your eyes and know you are here now. And so now set aside anything you have in your hands and just open your heart and breathe in and let it go. And realize that there is a garden of the heart that is always waiting for you. That your heart is always waiting for you, is always ready to speak to you. In fact, your heart is speaking to you right now. But can you become quiet enough to listen? Listen. Sometimes the best thing to do is to go on a little journey. So setting aside whatever we have in our mind, our heart, our hands. We imagine there's a doorway, a beautiful old double doorway. And above it says the garden of the heart. And we open the doors and we walk into this incredible enclosed garden. And we notice what's there. Remembering Jesus' words, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And paradise was the Persian word for an enclosed garden and was understood to mean the garden of the heart. And so in this paradise, what sounds, what sights, sense, and awarenesses are there for you? Notice the kinds of beautiful, natural growth is all around you. Feel the breath of the wind upon your face and your hands. Hear the sounds of nature and notice the scents in this garden. Completely immerse yourself in this moment, in this time, in this place. And know that your heart is always speaking to you. That this picture is simply an outforming of the heart space that is already waiting for you, ready, willing to fill your cup. But you must ask. What is it you want to say to me, O heart of mine? Often the heart speaks as a feeling. Sometimes the messages have words. But ask. Go deeply into this awareness, this space, immersed in the beauty, and ask. O garden of my heart, what is it you want to say to me? Perhaps you have a question or questions about your life or circumstances. This is your time to enter the garden of the heart, to ask and to listen without any attachment or concern. Ask, listen, and experience the beauty all around you. And now open up and give thanks that you have received an answer, even if you're not aware of what it is. You've been downloaded. You have received that which you needed. The upliftment, the vibration, the energy, the guidance, whatever you needed has been given to you. And you will carry this with you into your everyday life, and it will become more evident. You'll become more aware of this downloading as you move into this awareness deeper. You feel a great sense of gratitude and satisfaction and upliftment, which you will carry into your world. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so one more story as we're waiting for them and we're doing our offering. And that was back about 20 years ago. There was a man who was dying of AIDS and we didn't know it. He was our head musician. We had asked him to sing for our Christmas Eve candlelight service, and around October, people were telling us that he was looking really sick, but of course in those days, back in 1991 or 2, nobody talked about these things, and it was in the South. And so, you know, people were saying, you're going to have to do something about this, you're going to have to do something about it. And so I went and I asked his higher self, you know, what is it you need? And it was like, he said to me, his higher self said, you don't know what's going on here, there's something more important that's happening. And I didn't understand it, but I just went with it. And people kept saying, you know, wow, you're going to have to do something, but no. And Christmas Eve came, and we had hundreds of people show up. And in the first service, he could barely sing, and it was really uncomfortable. And then afterwards, he came up to me and he said, Greg, I need to pray because I don't think I can make it to the second service, which is 11 p.m. But we prayed together, and something happened. He got up and he sang more beautifully than he'd ever sung, ever. It was not loud, but it was so powerful. There was a quality that it was another world that was opening up. And after the service, he went home and he fell asleep, and that was it. And you say, well, what is it that was serving? It was serving a higher purpose for his soul. How do you find out those things? You have to talk to their higher self, and you have to engage with your inner heart. And that is a true story, and it was one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever known. So just wanted to share that with you. And now we're going to do our offering time, and our offering statement is, I give in love and I receive in love. Together? I give in love and I receive in love. And silently. And again aloud together. I give in love and I receive in love. And so it is. Amen.